So everybody got one of these sheets and put it into your binder. Put it in with the supplementary materials. And this is available online. All of the lessons and all of these supplemental materials are available online, but this is what we've been using as a master data sheet. And so far it's been working, but I think we could probably modify it over time, especially for the littler kids or the kids who have not as good reading skills. Possibly we could maybe make caricatures or something like that. So, you know, all of these materials are open for modification. But what we found was some of the information that we really want to know. One, we get the name of whoever the data collectors are, because then if you have to go back and ask, well, was it under this trap or that trap, or what was it, that we know the person who collected the data so that you can go back to it. And this is, you know, what we do in science anyway. As researchers in our lab books and that kind of thing, we always have to put our name on it, initial it. If we have, you know, some solution under the hood, it's got to have a date and it's got to have our initials so that we know who did that, and we can go and ask them if we need to know what it is or some kind of information. We want to know what the island is. We want to know GPS coordinates would be helpful. You might not get them right away, but you can always get them, because even if you go to Google Earth, you can Google your school and you can get your GPS coordinates. You get them on your phone, right? Elevation. We like to know what elevation you're at, because we want to know. When I was at our Mountain View school, which was at about 1,200 feet, the semi-slug was not there when we started the year. We did not see the semi-slug until the very last time that I came at the end of the spring semester, and we found 3 of them. The next fall, they were all over. That's how fast a population can explode. So we want to know too, we were wondering, is the semi-slug going to be elevation limited? It came from Southeast Asia, and we thought maybe this slug is going to be limited by temperature. It's up in Mountain View, and we don't know if it's up in Waimea actually right now. I've heard reports that it's in Waimea from people that I trust, and so that's another reason I want to work in Waimea, is I want to know if the semi-slug is up there. We did find it when we did a study about 1.5 years ago. It had not really been on the Kona side. They found a small population back in 2005 when Rob Hollinsworth did his study. Now it's all the way from Kailua down to Honaunau. So its range is definitely expanded on Hawaii Island quite a bit. And we need to know, you know, what elevation is your school at? That's important information. The date, because we want to know how over the course of the year, how do populations fluctuate? If we find eggs and we look at the date, we might be able to tell when their reproductive cycles are going on. You know, this is a way for us to gain knowledge. The weather, and we'll probably make drop-down menus so that everybody is collecting that type of thing the same way. So like rainy, cloudy, partly cloudy, sunny. That would probably be 4 different weather conditions. And we want to know that because that's important data too, to be able to figure out. The moon phase, is that on here? Yeah, the moon phase. I kind of say optional, but I kind of would really like that data. So we want to know the weather. I think that school garden should have a rain gauge in it. You know, rainfall information is really important. Plants grow because it rains. And so when we ran the pilot study, I gave every school a rain gauge. Some of the schools lost theirs, some of them broke them. The best rain gauge that we had was the rain gauge that Volcano School actually had of their own, and it was a big one. It was one of those big cylinders. It was really easy to read, and you know, it was attached to a fence, and I really liked that rain gauge, but it was kind of expensive. So again, if you're looking for a grant for small things like that, Koku Foundation, you know, ask them for money for a rain gauge or something. But in the meantime, you can buy a small rain gauge pretty inexpensively. I was buying them for about $5 or $6 or something like that. But rainfall is really an important factor. We really need to know that. The moon phase would be good, and then the data collected by. And so then if you have different sites, you can name them or number them. So we had 2 sites at each school, so it was site 1 or site 2. And that might be, you know, maybe you've got it over by these plants or under these conditions or something like that. So those sites might be important to you. And then for our purposes, for pilot project, these were the 5 different types of materials that we used. So we would go check under the cardboard trap, and we would look to see what species. So say we found 6 Veronicella cubensis. We would put in this box what the species was, and then we use tick marks. Because if you are writing numbers and then you find another one, you got to erase it. So we are using tick marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to be able to record how many we've got under each one. And then we had this other column, because a lot of times you just happen to find them. You know, they're under the plants, or you find them on the way to the garden, or they're in a place that was not one of these. So this data sheet will probably change as we start to use it. You know, the mesh, the weed cloth, we do find them under there. Plastic, we definitely find them. You know, wood. So these may work, but we may want to adapt them. And then we have a room for comments under here. And that would be stuff like, I found eggs, or something like that. You know, anything that is noticeable, you know, that's observation, that's science, that's what we're training the kids to do. So this is the sheet that we take to the garden. Some people have laminated it and used, you know, like a China marker or something to do it. So again, you know, we can modify this, but this would be the garden list. Something like this would be what you're going out into the garden and then bringing back to the classroom. So again, you know, because we've got multiple schools collecting data, everybody doing it the same way is really crucial. And it's going to take us a little while to get to that point, but what we're basically looking for is everybody collecting data the same way so that we can collect it into a large database that we can grow over time. So if we get a flatworm and we don't know what species it is, we'll just write flatworm. If we get a snail and we don't know what snail it is, we'll just write snail. Maybe large snail, small snail. Maybe try to describe it. Maybe say we have a picture of it, and then make a note of where that picture would be. And then the abbreviations that we're using the scientific name of the animals. So in your book, you'll see that each one of these guys has, most of them have the common name, some of them don't have a common name, but they will have the scientific name. And for that, then, we're using the first 3 letters of the genus name and the first 3 letters of the species name. So this was back when we thought that little yellow-bodied snail was Subulema octoma, and so we wrote suboct. And the kids kind of get they kind of shorten them, and so it's like, well, that's a Veronicella cubensis. Well, we're just writing ver cub. So the kids were out there, and there's like another ver cub, you know, another parmar, and so they kind of create this short lingo. But the kids get really good at knowing what they've got. So this is an example of one of the data sheets that the kids did. And this is that rain gauge that I really, really liked. Sometimes, you know, I have a clipboard that has the ruler along the side of it. And so sometimes we would take that out, and if we really need to observe it, we could put the slug right on there, and then later on wipe it down with a solution. You know, at that time we kind of I could take it home and use bleach and that kind of thing. A lot of times if you're wanting to observe, putting them in a plastic baggie like that is a nice way for the kids to look at them. Even putting them in a glass jar if you feel comfortable, so that the kids can really look at how their motion is, you know, how they move. They can watch them extend their tentacles and that kind of thing. So letting the kids really get to know and look at these guys is nice. And this is what I said, consistency is really important, using the first 3 letters of the genus and species name, and then taking photos. You know, there's a lot of them that I don't know what they are. And so it's just like, you know what, we're going to take pictures. We'll send those pictures to malacologists. They might be able to tell us what it is. Some of them are good enough that they can say, yeah, that's a this. You know, one that actually Rob Cowie had identified when the other guys came from the mainland, they're like, no, it's not that at all, it's this. And so it's tricky identifying these guys, but take photos and write comments of anything that you don't know what they are. And then this is where I say this is a great way to scaffold, you know, to have 5th graders can do this too. There's no doubt they can do this, but come in and take this information off of your paper sheet and put it onto a spreadsheet. And so this is where we have here, this is our school code. So these were all our partner schools. This was the date, the weather, the rainfall, the species, the number captured. We were calling them snugglers at the time, our shelters. It was like slugs, snail, shelter. We called them snugglers. You know, and then notes over here. And then we could run, you know, we could run our stats. We could look and say, what was our most effective shelter? And this was actually, let's see, is this is, yeah, so this was our 5 schools, number captured. I looked at the difference between all the schools. Kanuoka up in Waimea was a big outlier. It took all our data and skewed it because we collected a little over 4,000 invasive slugs and snails and a few flatworms that we collected at these 5 schools in one semester. Over 3,000 of those were from Waimea. So this is really cool. You can talk about outliers, you know, and so there's a lot of great statistics that you can do with this. And again, like what I said, what can we measure? Not just slugs and snails and shelters and rainfall and all, but we can also measure social change. How many kids actually went home and made a slug jug for home and are collecting at home? Cultural change. How many people now wash their food better or have shifted their eating habits somehow? So we can measure cultural change as well. One of the teachers I worked with was Filipino, and he said, we don't eat any raw food, we cook all of our food. So you can really get into cultural differences with this and look at how do different people eat in different ways and, you know, what are they doing with their food. And then this was lining up all of our schools. So you can look at species diversity, who's got the most diversity. Volcano had very, very few. That was the school that we captured the least at. Some of these we had to convert to log 10. We had a log 10 convert because Waimea had so many. So you get to learn how to log 10 convert. And you know, so we looked at numbers captured between the schools, the shelter type capture rate, the different types of species we did in bar graphs, but it's pretty fun. And that's where I look at this is so, math is so abstract to kids, and it's so hard to grasp those concepts. But when you're really working with things that you really knew, you saw them, you collected them, you know what this number represents, it makes math better. You know, it really makes math better. Oh, yeah, that would be good. Yeah, that would be good. And we could probably include that up there with the date. You could put the time, and that would be good. And like I said, this whole curriculum, I would hope that we have funding at the end of this year to revise the curriculum, because I know it's going to get revised and it needs to be revised. There's a lot of things that we're going to find out that we really need to add or change, and you guys are going to come up with fantastic lessons. I know that, and you're going to adapt them for your grade level. This is general. You know, this is pretty general. You guys are going to take this and really, really, really make this be really incredible. You're going to come up with your own activities. You're going to come up with your own studies, and it's going to be really great. So thank you for mentioning that, because all of this is available for revision, and that's what we want. We want your guys' input on how we can make this better.